This is Gemara Metziah Daf Kuf Yud Beis, and we're holding the very bottom of Kuf Yud Aleph Amid Beis, 5 lines from the wide lines. The first word on the line is Einoi Bechlal. We're in the middle of discussing the machlokes as to when there is the isser of, or the requirement, which includes a lav, the assay, to pay workers on time, and most particularly, we're delving into the end of the Mishnah on Amud Aleph, which the Mishnah concluded that a ger toishav yesh by misham yomotitin scharai, whereas ve'in by misham ve'ina loisolim pula sachir itcha ad boiker. We quoted Braisa's different psukim, and we're in the middle of the back and forth, figuring out what everyone does with each other's psukim. So it says the Gemara of Tanakama de Meichecha, Hi Re'echa, my of delay. According to Tanakama of Meichecha, that holds that a ger taishav is within all the isurim, just like a regular yid. What does he do with the fact that it says Re'echa, which we learned limits that only Re'echa and not other workers? Says the Gemara, Ahumi Baile, Humi Baile Lichletanya. Says the Gemara, we need it for a brais. What does the brais say? Riacha v'loi amaleki. Anaya drasha. A new drasha, says the Gemara. Not Riacha is not coming to exclude a ger toishav, but rather Riacha is coming to exclude an amaleki. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Amaleki me'achecha nafka. We already could learn that Amaleki from me'achecha that he's clearly not achecha. So why do we need another pasuk? Says the Gemara, Chad lemishra ashkai. One is to permit, to make him mutter leashkai, to keep on pushing him to pay. V'chad lemishra gazelai, and one is to allow stealing from the Amaleki. Utzricha, and we need two different limudim. Diash meaning gzelai. If we just had the pasuk that teaches us you let to steal from the Amaleki, I would have thought Misham Delay Tarachbe. I would have thought that the Maleki did not necessarily exert himself something for that item, maybe he found it, etc. Aval Ashkai, but to hold back his wages, the Tarach Gabe, he worked for it. Amalai, maybe that's different. And on the flip side, on the first wide line, V'yashmin and Ashkai, if you only talk about holding back his wages, I would have thought Misham Delay. You know why he called back his wages? He hasn't gotten it yet. So no, you don't have to give it to him. But to hourly steal from him, the asaliyadei, emalai, tzricha. Therefore, says the Gemara, we need two different psukim, the miyot of re'echa, as well as achecha by an amaleki. Says the Gemara on the second wide line, according to Rabbi Yehuda, ad baiker. What does he need that for? Our Mishnah quoted that to teach us that both by Behema and by Kalim, there is a din of having to pay on time. There's a din of not withholding wages. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that items are now included in the Isser of not paying the wages. My of delay. What does he do with this pasuk? Says the Gemara, Ravasi, Dam Ravasi. Let's say you hired a worker for one cluster of grapes. Shalanavim Iver Misham Baal Talin. Even for that, the smallest of monies, Lamaisa, you're obligated to pay him, and if you don't give it to him, you are over on Baal Talin. Ve'edach. What is the time of our Mishnah? How does he know this din of Ravasi afilu one cluster of grapes? Says the Gemara, maybe Elavu Noise Nafshay Nafka. Davar Amoise Nafshalav, something that he gives his nefesh for, even any amount of job, is included in these Isurim. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Kufiyad Beis Amid Aleph. Vedach, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what does he do with the drasha that we just said? Maybe Elavu Noise Nafshay. According to Rabbi Yehuda, explains the Gemara, we need that for the following brayso that says ve'ilav hu noisei as nafshay What is the reason that the worker climbs up a high ramp to work? Or he hangs from a tree to collect fruits. And he even gives himself over to Misa for the sake of work. Loi al scharai. The reason why the person does these actions for his job, loi al scharai, was it not for the fact that he wanted to get paid? Tavaracher, another way of learning the psakim. Ve'ilavu noises nafshay kolai kovish schacher ki'ilu noitel ev nafshay mimeni. So different drashas that we learn from these psakim, and therefore says the Gemara, we don't need to necessarily learn out from there like Ravasi learned out. Rav Huna v'Rav Chisda, says the Gemara, Rav Huna and Rav Chisda argue about the aforementioned pasuk that we just said about the worker risking his life. Chad Omar nafshay shel gazlan v'cham Omar nafshay shel nigzal. One says the pasuk is referring to that the one who's employing the worker risks his life if he doesn't pay the wages. That the employee, the worker, he puts his life in danger if he doesn't receive that which he needs. So says the Gemara, that makes sense. Do not steal from the poor, because he is poor. And nor should one oppress the poor at his gate. Uksiv, and the next pasuk says, Ki Hashem Yoriv Rivam V'Koves Koveim Nefesh. For Hashem is going to fight their battle and rob the life of them, those who steal from them. So what do we see? That the word Nefesh is talking about the one who does the action of stealing. And therefore, that's referring to the employer. And then the drasha of saying, that the employer could lose his life makes a lot of sense. And says the Gemara, the worker, one who is greedy takes the life of its owner. So here we see it refers to the victim. Says the Gemara, so how does you learn the other pasuk? Well, the hashta means the current owner, the robber, because he has the money. Matam kamer, matam kaves kaveim. Misham denavloi nafshay nefesh. So says the Gemara, each one is able to learn the pasuk of the other. And we continue at the two dots about 25 lines down, quoting the next segment of the Mishnah, which is as follows. Emasai. When do these halachas apply of withholding wages? So only when the worker comes and his teveya asks for his cash. But if the worker never comes and asks, then one is not over. Says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanon. Loisalin pula sachir. Says the pasuk, the wages of the employee should not stay overnight. Yachla, I would think even if he didn't ask for it. Itcha, ledaitcha yachla. Even if you don't have it, even if you pushed him to get his wages by the chamini, therefore you will not be over in those cases. Drashas that we already learned, but now seeing them in the psukim, and adding on the clause that we're learning now, that it's only when the worker comes and asks for his wages is the employer, is the boss, over by not paying him. The case that we just said, that if the boss doesn't himself not pay him, but rather pushes him off to go collect from the chemini, the storekeeper or the money changer, there's no ister. So Ibayilu says the Gemara, chayzer or inay chayzer. So you tell your worker, go to the money changer, go to the store, and they're going to pay you. Okay, he the lemaisa doesn't get paid. Can the worker now come back and ask for his money or not? The question basically is that the worker agreed to get his wages from the storekeeper, from the money changer, and now he didn't because the guy didn't pay him. So is he allowed to go back to the owner, or the fact that he already accepted to get from the storekeeper, the money changer, the shulchani, the chaven, he has to go to him? So says the Gemara, we have a machlokes. Rav Sheshes Amar Einoi Chayzer, Rabba Amar Chayzer. So a classical machlokes, Rabba and Rav Sheshes, and explains the Gemara. Amar Rabba Amin, where do I know the din that Chayzer Midiktani and Iver Allah, and the fact that the Mishnah says that the employer, the owner, the boss is not Iver. For there we learn now, Maver who's Layavar, he's not Iver. Hamahadar Hadar, but the guy can still come back and get his wages. Says Rav Sheshes, no, what do you mean it's not over? It means he's not in the parsha, he's done. He patterned himself up, he told the guy to get the money from there, the guy agreed, and now it's in that other person's power, and no longer the Baal Habas. Says the Gemara, a very fundamental question in this whole sugya of paying back workers on time. Kablanas over la misham bal talin, ayin over love misham bal talin. Says the Gemara, we've been discussing hourly workers, we've been discussing daytime workers, week, all based on the time. But what about a kablan? What about one that is paid to do the job? When he finishes the job, if he's not immediately paid, or what's the get there, we have to see, is he over on, is the owner, the boss, over on Baal Talin? Says the Gemara, let's explain the Shaila. The Shaila is based upon, do we say, Uman Kaine B'Shach Kli, that the worker, that when he betters the item that he's working on, he makes a kinyan. Ve'halvahi, and therefore, the money that is owed to him is like a loan because he made a kinyan on the item. Then he's going to return it to the owner, and the owner is going to give him his money that is due. So it's a form of halva, and therefore there would be no Baal Talin. Or no, he wasn't kaineh, and therefore he's working for me. It's a regular schiras, and therefore there would be the dinam of Baal Talin. Amru Rav Sheshes, Oiver, there is an Isser. Ask the Gemara Vatani in Oiver. But the Gemara wants to assume, wants to suggest that there is an Isser Baal Talin, even if the worker is being paid for the job. Says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom, name Metziah, I'll bring you right to Rav Sheshes. Says the Braisa, I know you're saying that Lisa Luman, come Rav idea if you finish working on any let owner, no, if you let me can, Vadazari Yamim. Ein over misham bal talin nasla b'chatziyim. If you give it to him in the middle of the day, mishich chalama, mishich chalav acham when the sun sets. Over misham bal talin. V'amar omar kemishach kli amai over. Why would there be an iser? So rather, what must we say? It must be that the uman is not kain b'shach kli, and therefore there is an iser bal talin if you don't pay him, just like Rav Sheshes suggested. Says Gemara, Mari B'Rav Rav Kana. No raya begarda desarbala, because we can explain that brisa is referring to fixing a thick garment, and therefore when it's done, it weakens the clothing, and therefore in this case there would be no kinyan, and the money owed to him would be regular schiras. Therefore, there's no raya for this case, particularly because in this case he's weakening, he's cheapening at some level the item by working on it. Why did he give it to him, says the Gemara? L'rakucha, to soften it. Says the Gemara, okay, I know shvach. I mean, the Gemara is saying, shkayach, that in the process, the garment is weakened. But clearly, there's a reason you want him to work in it for you. Whatever that reason is, that's the shvach. Says the Gemara, the case is, he hired him to stamp his clothing, and each and every stamping is a ma, and therefore we can explain that it has nothing to do with kablanis at all. Really, it's a form of schiros. That's the reason why there would be Baal Talin, but it's not. We do not necessarily have a raya to Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes is teaching us that there is the Surma of Baal Talin even by a kablan, the Gemara tried to bring a raya, the Gemara does not have a raya. We continue on Kuf Yud Beis Amid Beis Sacher Bizmanoi Nish Avinoitel. The Mishnah taught us that a worker, when he comes to collect his wages, he swears and he takes. Says the Gemara, Sacher Amaitikin Lerabanan Limishtabe Vishakil. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. What is the reason that he has to swear and take his wages? Answers the Gemara, Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Halachais gedailos shanu kan. Big halachais were taught here. Okay, says the Gemara. Hani hachazaninu. Are these really halachais, which we think, as Rashi points out, 2 lines from the narrow lines, he halachas Moshe Misinahim? What do you mean? They're takanas derabanan. Ella hanu takanas denu. Ella Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. You're right. Takanas gedailos shanu kan. Okay, so now says the Gemara, what are these gedailos? Gedailos mechal dika kitanos. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? What din derabanan is considered kitanos? We're having a little bit of a issue just understanding the simple words of Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Ella Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, this is what Shmuel meant. Takanos kivuos shanukan. These are set takanos. Shvua de balabayis, that the shvua should have been made by the balabayis, which means the owner, the employer, that he should have been able to swear that he does not owe the worker any money. But a takana gedaila was v'akurua rabana on the shvua, 12 lines down. The first one line is l'shvua kuf yibeiz mebeis de balabayis v'shadua sochir. Chazal came and they took the shvua from the balbayis, they put it on the worker. Why? Mishom k'dei chayav de sochir, because this is the livelihood. The sochir needs this money desperately, and therefore we allow him to make the shvua and collect his wages. Says the Gemara, what? Mishom k'dei chayav de sochir mifasidin alei lebalbayis, because he needs his cash. The balbayis should lose out. Says the Gemara, balbayis gufei nichlel, balbayis is happy that he should swear and take. Why? So that lemaisa, there will be people that will be willing to hire themselves out as workers because they'll know that in an event that they have an issue collecting their wages, they'll be able to swear and get their money. Says the Gemara, okay, but gufei nichlei de mishavalei balbayis v'yipaka. The sheicher should be happy that the balbayis should be the one swearing. So that the balbayis hires him. Meaning we're saying that the balbayis is happy that the workers swear so we can find the workers. Says the Gemara, let's say it the other way. Say that the workers happy that balbayis should swear so that he should want to hire workers. Says the Gemara, balbayis al karchei agir. Balbayis has no choice. He needs workers. So he'll do it either way. Says the Gemara, shkaya sechanami. The Seicher as well needs work. He needs cash. Ella, says the Gemara, Balabayis, Tarid b'payalamu. The Balabayis is Tarid. And therefore the Balabayis might not remember, might not realize whether he actually paid a worker or not. And therefore Chazal transferred the Shvuah onto the worker. Says the Gemara, if we're really chayshish that the balbayis might have dropped the ball over here, he might not have realized if he paid or not. So why is there any shvuah at all? He should have to just pay. Says Mark just to make the balbayis mind at ease. So because both the balbayis needs the workers and the worker needs the balbayis, really it's almost a weighted issue. So the reason why we're putting the shvuah on the workers because the balbayis is tarud. Really the balbayis should have to pay just straight up. But no, to become his mind, we make the worker swear. Says the Gemara, 1 second, why do you make edim? Why did you make a shvuah? Why don't you just say that when he pays the work, you have to pay with the edim? Says the Gemara, so that's a big tircha to always find the edim. Why didn't he originally give him at the beginning, pay the worker before the job, and then there would be no need for a shvuah? Shneim writes in ba'akafa. They're both happy to do it on credit. the Baal Bayis, because he might not have the cash, and the worker, because he doesn't want to lose the work, the money, says Rashi, while he is working. So says the Gemara, if this is a din d'Rabbanan in the Shvuah, 4 lines from the wide lines, that's nami. The Shvuah should apply even in a case where there was a stipulation. Explains the Gemara, Lama Tanya. Why do we learn in a Brayso? Una uman amar shtayim katzatzi li. If the uman says you stipulated for 2, and the owner said, you have to bring a raya. Over here, there's no shvuah. Says the Gemara, why? Why isn't there this takana gitayla, this shvuah, which would allow either the worker to swear and take or the balabais to swear and be pater? Why is there no shvuah in this case? And why rather are we saying says the Gemara, when it comes to ksitza, people remember what it was, and therefore there's no reason for a shvuah. In the case where we said the balabais is tarud, balabais is busy paying, working, he doesn't necessarily know which work he pays, we create a shvuah. But in the case of ksitza, it's not necessary. Says the Gemara further, Yachi, based on this shvuah d'Rabbanan, if you love zman nami, there should be a shvuah even once the zman passes. Alama tanya over zmanoi, eino nishba v'naitel. Once the time for payment passed, he can no longer swear and pay. Why not? Says the Gemara, Chazaki and Balbais every misha baltalin. There's no reason to assume that the Balbais was over in Issa Daraisa baltalin. So if the time passed, we have a Chazaka that says he must have paid. Ask the Gemara of Amr Balbais Arbabayalavu. What do you mean? The whole impetus of the shvuah began because of Balbais is tarid. So maybe it happened that he didn't pay. Says Gemara, Hani mi makin delmati zmani chayuve. When's he tarid? Before the zman comes. So we turn over to tomorrow's Daf Yomi Gimel Amud Aleph. However, avlamata zman chayuva rami anavshei umitkare. But once the zman for payment comes, at that point the Balbayis puts it on his mind and remembers because he doesn't want to be over an Isser Daraisa. Says the Gemara on the second line of Kif Gimel Amud Aleph, Chisacher Iver Misham Bal Teksal. But are we assuming that the Sachir, the worker, the employee, is going to be over on stealing? Why are we assuming that? Says Gemara, Hasav Trei Chazaki, Hacha Chada Chazaka. Explains the Gemara. Kabe Balabais, we have number 1, he can Trei Chazaki, Chada Dein Balabais, Iver Misham Bal Talin, and Chada Dein Sachir, Mishas Chara, he doesn't usually delay in getting paid. Hacha, the worker only has Chada Chazaka, saying that he's not going to steal. Let's just one last shtickle Gemara. We'll end at the Mishnah. The previous Mishnah concluded that if there are edim that he asks for his money, then he swears and collects. Says the Gemara, Vakatavu. Ask the Gemara, Vakatavu, come on. But he's asking in Bezdin. So what's the reason why by having edim that he paid previously is going to help him? If there are edim that he asked prior, well, what sheikh is he now in front of Bezdin? Amr Avasi shetavai bizmanoi means edim that he say that he asked bizmanoi. Achi para. Maybe the owner paid afterwards. Amr Abaye shetavai kolzmanoi. He was asking him the whole time. But are we going to say that the workers always believed to say he wasn't paid? Maybe he was paid. Says the Gemara, it means on that day, on that whole day he was asking, and that day he asked the employees, not would say he wasn't paid. Therefore, there would be a shvuah that he would be allowed to collect. Pick it up from the Mishnah, B'siyata Dishmaya.